Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Her Forbidden Tales channel. Today we will continue to explore Yuna's story. In the second chapter, Yuna makes a significant decision to sign a 2-year slave contract with the club. This journey will take us deep into the motivations behind her choice and the challenges she is about to face. Please close your eyes and enjoy. Chapter 3. Entry. They instructed me to bring along any clothing I might need upon departure. But how could I possibly know what I would need when the time came to leave? I had signed a 2-year contract with the club, and the thought of departure hadn't even crossed my mind. Instead, I was preoccupied with the question, when would I arrive? So, I quickly packed 2 or 3 suitcases with the disposable clothes they had asked me to wear during the journey. Additionally, there was an overnight bag containing items I might need on the ship. But at the last moment, I slipped into a little black dress. I thought to myself, to hell with it. Maybe I'll head straight to Tokyo afterward and blow every penny they've paid me over the 2 years. Gambling away $100,000 seemed like the perfect thing to do. I mean, it's ironic that they're paying me. I should be the one paying them. I also packed my new book, though I wasn't sure why. By the time I return, it might still be available in a few bookstores, if the Middle East war is still ongoing. Photography books tend to have staying power, but who knows? I had this thought. Once I leave the club, I'd want to flip through this book immediately, maybe even on the plane ride out. One thing that might truly matter is remembering who I was before I went in. But how likely is that? By then, how likely is it that I'd still consider myself a decent photographer? Maybe after 2 years, everything will seem like garbage. As for the unfinished book, Salvador, well, it's too late now. In this regard, there's only one thing I care about, shaking off this strange feeling that I should die, simply because some despicable person almost seemed intent on making it happen. I want to shake off this sensation, this belief that being alive, breathing, and moving around is some kind of miracle. Last night was strange. I was utterly exhausted from waiting. Ever since signing the contract, it's been nothing but waiting. I turned down assignments from Time magazine that I would normally have gladly accepted, and I avoided everyone I knew. Then came the final phone call, the same gentle, cultured voice. A Japanese gentleman, or perhaps a Japanese man acting like an English gentleman without the British accent. Something along those lines. I closed up my house in Kyoto and went for a drink at the Max Hotel in Ginza. It was wonderful to look around and see people against the backdrop of brass, plate glass, and neon lights. Some of Tokyo's most beautiful women strolled through Ginza. You could see them at the Italian restaurant Umberto's or at the Max Hotel, exquisitely made-up ladies, their hair professionally styled, wearing designer clothes, always a sight to behold. Then there was the large bookstore, aptly named A Clean, Well-Lighted Place, where I could pick up a thick volume of Edogawa Rampo's detective novels to read on the ship, along with a few books by Seicho Matsumoto and Keigo Higashino. Highbrow escapist reads, the kind I'd pore over in a hotel room at 3 in the morning while bombs fell on Damascus. I almost called home to say goodbye again, but in the end, I didn't. Instead, I took a taxi to the waterfront address. It was just a desolate warehouse. The taxi drove off, and then a well-dressed man appeared, the kind of nondescript fellow you'd see in the business district at noon, wearing a gray suit, shaking your hand with enthusiasm. You must be Yuna. He led me to the dock. A beautiful yacht was moored there, silent as a ghost ship, its lights reflecting in the black water. I walked up the gangway alone. Another man appeared, far more interesting. He was young, perhaps my age, with untidy black hair, a dashing appearance, and sun-kissed skin. His white shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows. When he smiled, he revealed perfect teeth in an unusual way. He guided me to the cabin and took my suitcase from me. You won't see these suitcases again for 2 years, he said in a friendly tone. Yuna, is there anything you need for the journey? Everything in the cabin will eventually go into these suitcases, including your wallet, passport, watch, and anything else you leave behind. I was a little surprised. We stood close together in the corridor. I realized that this meant he knew who I was and where I was being taken. He wasn't just someone working on the yacht. "Don't worry about a thing," he said, standing under the light, which revealed freckles on his nose and sunstreaks in his hair. Then he pulled something small from his pocket, a gold chain with a name tag. "Hold out your right wrist," he instructed. He fastened the bracelet, clicking the clasp shut. The touch of his fingers sent a shiver down my spine. "Your meals will be delivered through that small hatch. You won't see or speak to anyone during the voyage. However, the doctor will come for a final check, so the door won't be locked until then." He opened the cabin door, and soft amber light spilled in, revealing dark-grained wood under a layer of glossy lacquer. His words echoed in my mind. "The door won't be locked until then." The little bracelet annoyed me immensely, clinging to my wrist like a spider's web. I saw my name on the tag, followed by what looked like a code of numbers and letters. Again, I felt that shiver down my neck. The cabin was quite nice. It had luxurious brown leather armchairs, mirrors everywhere, a wide bed with plenty of cushions, a fixed TV monitor above a video library, and many books. Most prominent were Edogawa Rampo's detective collections, alongside erotic classics like The Story of O, Justine, The Sleeping Beauty trilogy, The Punishment of Beauty, and The Romance of the Whip. There was also a coffee grinder, glass jars of coffee beans, a fridge stocked with French mineral water and Japanese soda, a tape recorder, and a beautifully decorated deck of cards, still sealed. I picked up a paperback edition of Edogawa Rampo. Then, without a knock, the door opened. I jumped. It was clearly the doctor, wearing a stiff white coat. He had a relaxed, amiable demeanor and carried the obligatory black bag. Without the coat and bag, I wouldn't have guessed he was a doctor. He looked like a bored teenager, even a bit like someone recovering from acne, with an exhausted air about him. His short brown hair was as messy as could be. Maybe he was a resident who had just finished a 20-hour shift. He gave me a polite but vacant look, immediately pulled out a stethoscope, and asked me to remove my shirt. Then he took a manila folder from his bag and opened it on the bed. "Miss Yuna," he said, scratching his head before looking at me, trying to figure out what was going on. He was already tapping my chest. 29 years old, in good health, no major issues. Do you have a regular doctor?" He turned back to the folder, checking the signed medical report. "Everything checks out," he murmured in a nasal tone. "But we still like to ask you directly." I nodded. "You exercise, don't you?" "You don't smoke." "Good." Of course, my personal doctor had filled out the report without knowing the purpose of the examination. "Suitable for long-term, strenuous physical activity," he had scribbled in barely legible handwriting at the bottom. "Everything seems to be in order, Miss Yuna," the doctor said, putting the folder back in his bag. "Eat well, sleep well, and enjoy the voyage. You won't be able to see much outside the window, as it's coated with a film that blurs the view. We have one suggestion: avoid any private sexual stimulation during the journey." He looked me straight in the eye. "You know what I mean." I was startled but tried not to show it. So he knew everything too. I didn't respond. "When you arrive at the club, you'll be in a state of sexual tension," he said as he walked to the door. He might as well have told me to take an aspirin and call him next week. "If you're in that state, you'll perform much better. I'm going to lock the door now, Miss Yuna. In case of any emergency on the ship, the door will open automatically. There's also more than enough life-saving equipment on board. However, the door won't open for any other reason. Do you have any final questions?" Final questions? I couldn't help but chuckle under my breath, though I couldn't think of anything. My heart was beating a little too fast. I looked at him for a moment, then said, "No, thank you, doctor. I think you've covered everything. You said no masturbation? That's harsh, but I never wanted hair growing on my palms anyway." He laughed abruptly, appearing as though he were another person. "Enjoy yourself, Miss Yuna." He spoke, struggling to control his smile. The door closed behind him, and I heard the sound of the lock turning. For a long while, I sat on the bed, gazing at the door. I could already feel a stirring between my legs, but I resolved to play this game with all my might. It would be like being 12 again, with guilt based on common sense. Besides, I knew he was right. It was best to arrive at the club with all organs in overdrive, ready for action, not to run on an empty tank. As far as I knew, they would be watching me through some mirrors. After all, I now belonged to them. Strange, the bracelet did not bear the word slave. I had signed all the documents myself. I took a book from the shelf, not a work of pornography. Then I leaned comfortably against the pillow and began to read. It was a work by Haruki Murakami. Great stuff, but I had read it before. I reached for Edogawa Rampo's detective stories. A wonderful facsimile of the stories originally published in Hama magazine, complete with little ink drawings. I hadn't seen anything like it in years. It was great to be with Edogawa Rampo again, remembering just enough to find it interesting without spoiling the experience. It was what they called a noble pleasure. After a while, I put the book down and looked at the shelf again, hoping to find a book by Natsume Soseki or Tanizaki Junichiro about the discovery of Livingstone, but there was none. I did have a book by Natsume Soseki in my suitcase, packed a few days ago but forgotten. For the first time, I felt like a prisoner. I tried the door. It was locked. No choice. I had to sleep. Sometimes playing games is hard. I spend a lot of time showering, soaking in the tub, doing push-ups, and reading all of Haruki Murakami's works, including Norwegian Wood, Kafka on the Shore, and 1Q84, and I also watched all the DVDs. One movie really moved me. The film was brand new, still wrapped in a brown mailing envelope, which I finally opened. It was a small film about Tokyo gypsies, titled, "And Paul, My Love." I wished there were 2 or 3 episodes, all about the same gypsies, the same child named Anne Paul. But strangely, a film like this appeared in a collection mixed with Akira Kurosawa's film noir classics and the bright, trendy trash of Flashdance. I took the wrapping paper out of the trash can. The DVD had been sent by express from a tape store in Osaka 2 or 3 days before we left. Strange, it seemed as if someone had watched this film, liked it, and on impulse ordered it for the yacht's cabin. I didn't know if anyone on the boat was watching this film, but not a single sound seeped into the room. I slept for a long time. In fact, I spent most of my time sleeping. I didn't know if the food delivered through the door was drugged, but I thought not, because I woke up feeling very refreshed. Occasionally, I woke up at midnight, knowing what I had done. I was to be sent to the club, this strange place, for 2 years. No matter how I begged or pleaded, I was not allowed to leave for 2 years. Yet, this was the least important part. The most important thing was, what would happen there? I remembered my master, the one who trained me, my secret sexual mentor, Martin Harasax, kept saying, until the very end. He said, 2 years is too long. Go for 6 months, Yuna, a year at most. You really can't imagine what the club is like. You've never been imprisoned anywhere for more than a few weeks. Those were small places, Yuna. The club is a big place. We're talking about 2 years now. I no longer wanted to argue with him. I had said it 1,000 times. I wanted to get lost in it, no more 2-week journeys and exotic weekends. I wanted to indulge in it, sink deep into it, unable to remember time, because I believed that one day time would end. Enough, Martin. You've sent all the documents, I said. They've checked my body, accepted me. If I weren't ready, they wouldn't have accepted me, right? You are ready, he mused. You can handle what happens there. But is this what you want? I want to jump into this so-called abyss, Martin. I've been saying this all along. I actually remember the rules and regulations. I would receive a fee of $100,000 during my service. For 2 years, I would be their property, to be dealt with as they pleased. If they paid us that much, I wonder how much they charged the guests, those who would use us. Now, on the yacht, there was no turning back. Although I could hear the sea, I could not see it, nor could I truly smell it. I turned over and fell asleep again. In fact, I couldn't wait to get there. I wanted to be in that place now. I got up at night, touched the door again, made sure it was locked, and then the desire in my heart was uncontrollable, bursting out in a half-entangled state of painful and sweet dreams. Later, I felt a bit of regret, but there was only one mistake, coming out like that, like a Catholic boy having a wet dream. I often thought of Martin, of the way it all started. The secret life, as he said, and so I said to myself. He mentioned that wealthy family so many times, and finally, I had someone explain everything. It was really difficult to make that phone call, yet standing outside that huge Meiji-era building at 9 o'clock on a summer night, feeling both nervous and excited, was so easy. The cars almost blew past me like a strong wind, heading up the hill, while I turned and took a brief walk under the tall, straight cherry trees to the cast-iron gate. To the basement door. Forget those prostitutes in black tights and stiletto heels. Have you been a bad boy? Do you need a spanking? Or forget those doll-faced but dangerous little prostitutes with voices like thugs. This time it would be a genuine sadomasochistic luxury escort journey. First, civilized conversation. In the large room with dimly lit, disorderly extending panels, small lamps burned. When the light illuminated the paintings and tapestries on the wall, it was no brighter than candles. Oriental screens, crimson and gold tweed window curtains, dark French doors coated with shellac along the distant wall, with mirrors as door glass, and a comfortable leather high-back chair. One of my feet rested on a footstool, and the man behind the table cast a shadowy figure. Martin would soon become my lover, my mentor, my therapist, and my generous partner in the private room. He was tall, with black hair, a voice that sounded young, silver strands faintly visible at his temples, a domestic 50-something university professor, wearing a brown V-neck sweater, the collar of his shirt open. His eyes were small, but shone with a bright, inquisitive gaze, as if always examining something marvelous. An old-fashioned gold watch gleamed against the black hair on his arm. "Do you mind the smell of a pipe?" "I am very fond of it. The Sobrani tobacco from the Balkan Peninsula is excellent. I am nervous, yet I sit quietly in the chair, my eyes scanning the walls where ancient landscapes emerge beneath the cracked shellac, and small painted statues appear on the mahogany wardrobe. This is a place detached from the mundane world. Clusters of purple flowers are arranged in a pewter vase, contrasting with the marble clock. The carpet is of that smooth, deep purple velvet, now only seen on the marble staircases of very old hotels. There are sounds coming from above the house, the creaking of wooden boards, a muffled echo of music. "Now I want you to talk to me, Yuna." He exudes an air of comfortable authority, as if this had not been rehearsed, as if it had never happened before. "I want you to relax and tell me about the fantasies you've enjoyed over the years. You don't have to describe them vividly. We know how to describe things vividly because we are geniuses in that regard." He leans back, his gaze wandering across the ceiling, his eyebrows revealing a hint of gray. For a moment, the pipe emits a thick smoke, then it dissipates. "If describing fantasies is difficult, you can write them down, if you prefer. I can give you some time, provide you with paper and a pen, and a typewriter if you like it better. But I think the occurrence was facilitated by you. It's a so-called environment, a world." "Yes, Yuna, don't worry about it. We will control it, completely control it, as long as you walk through that door. We have 1,000 ideas, 1,000 ways of doing things, and all have been proven. But what's important is that we talk first. Talk about you. Talk about your imagination. This is a good way to start. Would you like a cigarette?" "Yuna. I know I must start doing this, must start turning the wheel, yet how troubled and uneasy I am inside. As I walk to the door, I understand that I have yielded. Yes, I am guilty. Punish me. How troubled and uneasy I am inside, for I find myself saying, 'I want to walk through that door now.' 'It will be soon,' he replies, smiling. His eyes study me, soft, becoming larger, more mature. It's the ease of someone who has known you all your life. That kind of person would never harm anyone. That face is like a family doctor, like a university professor, understanding and respecting your passion for the subject, also like the perfect father." I'm not the type you'd expect to do this, I say uncomfortably. Good heavens, he is a handsome man, his physique exuding a kind of elegance that young people do not possess. No matter how beautiful the young are, they do not possess this kind of elegance. I was boring in my student days, I say. At home, they thought I was irritable, disobedient. When it comes to male hobbies, I am almost a veteran. I'm not boasting, I think you understand. I shift slightly in my chair, uncomfortable. I think it's absurd, risking life at a speed of 150 miles per hour, racing on the Laguna Seca track, skiing down the most dangerous slopes in the world, pushing a 10-pound light aircraft to its highest altitude and fastest speed with a teacup of gas.